This is my pet Russian tortoise, and today I'm going to be going over this amazing tortoises care guide. You're going to be learning about their diet, what you need to set up their enclosure, and their habitat. So you'll be able to learn all of the amazing facts and what you'll need to start off with this amazing species, which is honestly one of the best beginner tortoise species you can possibly keep. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. Now, do not let the name Russian tortoise fool you. They can be in more colder temperatures. They're a really hardy species, but they mainly come from dry, really hot places, mainly like Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, places like that, like around almost like the Middle Eastern part of Asia, like around the Middle East. And as I said, they're very hardy. You can keep them outdoors in like little kind of like A-frame shaped greenhouses, or like little greenhouses outside during the winter. You can bring them indoors. That's what I am planning to do this year with my Mediterranean tortoises, which includes my Russian tortoise. I kind of like include Russian tortoises into kind of like a Mediterranean tortoise factor, because like that kind of group of tortoises, because they feed on the same diet. We'll get into that later in the video. Indoors, you're going to want to give them a nice, like a really big enclosure for some people, but like that's the only thing you have to think about. Like, of course, this is a smaller tortoise, but they do need a bigger enclosure. Just because they're a smaller tortoise doesn't mean they need a, exactly smaller enclosure. What I like to do is, I've mentioned this before on my channel, you can measure your tortoise, like measure how many inches long and shell length it is, and add a 0 behind however amount of inches that they are, and you can kind of, measure them like what tank size you need. Say if it's a 6-inch long tortoise, you're going to need a 60-gallon enclosure. That just works out perfectly in my opinion. And that's like the preferred like amount of gallons you give to your Russian tortoise, so it all works out perfectly. Now, for enclosure setup wise, you're going to need a really good substrate. Now, the number one key takeaway about Russian tortoises is they love digging. They're magnificent diggers. You're going to need to make a good, sturdy substrate that they can dig in, that will become compact, that, is like really good for them, and it can also kind of replicate their, natural habitats substrate. So what you're going to want to mix together, this is like the best substrate I've ever found, is you're going to want to go to Lowe's or some hardware store that is near you, get some organic topsoil, get some children's play sand, and some peat moss. Mix those together. It is a cheap substrate that can not only provide you enough substrate for your tortoise's enclosure, but for many other projects. Like, that'll give you just a lot of substrate. And the great thing about that substrate, this like mixture, this concoction that you're bringing together of all these different soils, is that it makes a really great crust on the top, kind of like it'll harden on the top whenever it dries from their basking light, and it'll become kind of, compact under that. Like, it'll get dry, but it'll also, compact whenever they dig, almost. You want to make sure it is staying kind of moist, but you do not want your tortoise's enclosure to become too humid. They do not come from a tropical area, as I mentioned earlier in the video. They come from dry, kind of Middle Eastern areas. Now, some obvious things you'll need to put in their enclosure is, of course, a food dish, water dish, definitely some hides, and some plants, okay? They can be fake plants. Just, monitor your tortoise, make sure they're not trying to take a bite out of them. I know my tortoise would try to take a bite out of some fake plants, because my Russian tortoise, personally, is a tank. If you're new to the channel, my Russian tortoise is an absolute tank. Anything you set in front of her, she's going to try to eat if it's green. But yeah, live plants is always the way to go. And, some safe plants for them would be, hostas, ferns, even some cactus plants out there. Just all kinds of different things. You can just kind of play around with it, do some more research, find out, like, if you have a plant that, you grow at your home, like, do some research, figure out if it's, healthy or it can be in your Russian tortoise's enclosure, because, plants are one of the best things you can add into your animal's enclosure, because if they can hide in it, if they can feel safe and secure in it, they are going to be a happy tortoise. Your tortoise wants to hide and feel safe and secure. If your tortoise hides, like, all the time, like, it's not because they are scared and want to get away from you, it's because they feel safe within their enclosure, and that's how you want them to feel. If they can blend into their environment that they're in, they're going to be happy and not feel stressed. Now, moving on to basking, okay, and lighting in general. You're going to want to get a really good high-quality UVB light. That's the thing you really need to worry about. I prefer a T5 UVB bulb. Something better than that. The T5HO Repti Sun. This is great. It can get a little pricey, but it is worth it. Okay, this is not even sponsored. It is just a great product in general. Really great. It has lasted me a while. I use this on a lot of my animals. It is great. That is a definite UVB bulb that you can use. Now, heat lamps are another story. They are not as serious as, you can really, Zoom Ed puts them out, Flukers puts them out. Just get a heat bulb, make sure it is not going to scald or, just burn and fry your tortoise. You want to get it at a maximum of 100 watts, a minimum of 50 watts, so kind of in that range, because it really just depends on the enclosure and how high up the heat lamp is. If it's lower down and closer to the tortoise, you're obviously going to want to go with a lower wattage, but if it's kind of farther up, you're going to want to go with a higher wattage so it can reach the tortoise. Now moving on to diet. This is where it gets a little more serious, okay? The main thing that you're going to want to feed your Russian tortoise is greens, okay? Mustard greens, collard greens, dandelion greens, all kinds of things like that will go into your Russian tortoise's diet. Something really helpful is grocery stores everywhere sell packages of microgreens. You can give that to them. Because it has all kinds of different greens in there, thrown together, so you don't have to, kind of spend more money buying bunches of greens and then tearing them up, mixing them together. Honestly, that's what I do, because I like to have a really varied diet for my tortoises. I take mustard greens, chop them up, put them in a bowl, then mix them with collard greens. That'll be a meal. And sometimes I'll add in some pelleted diet. There's a lot of pelleted diets out there. You just kind of have to figure out what your pet store sells. There's Fluker's buffet blend. There's Missouri tortoise diet. There's all kinds of pelleted diets you can give to your Russian tortoise and other tortoises in general. So many different kinds out there. But make sure your tortoise is generally on a low protein diet and low fruit diet, okay? These tortoises cannot have fruit really at all. They shouldn't be eating fruit. They're not something like a red-footed tortoise that can get fruit, 2 to 3 times a week. These tortoises should not have fruit at all. It can cause internal problems. It can give them diarrhea. It can do things like that to them. It can really have an effect on their overall health, because proper diet is the key to keeping a healthy tortoise. If you don't feed something to them, or if you feed too much of something to them, they can get MBD, metabolic bone disease, and that is basically what most tortoises get, what most carekeepers do not get about keeping their tortoise. Just avoid fruit completely whenever you are feeding your Russian tortoise. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, consider subscribing to my channel to learn more about the amazing turtles and tortoises. So, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one.